Garth, as you look at the region and sort of the political structure that exists both in South Africa and neighboring countries, what do you think the pipeline outbound is going to look like? Are they going to set up, the more like a supply chain that is focused on export, which is frequently what's happened in South America, or do you think there'll be a local market first?
In some ways, Chris, there is already a local market. One can go to just about all of our big supermarket chains and you can buy CBD products of one kind or another. And I think that points to an important consideration which you've alluded to. I don't think this is going to be, a big bang and that on day one we've got nothing and day two suddenly everything's in place. So there's enormous pressure from the private sector, from communities, from labor on government, on the back of the fact that the President Ramaphosa, said in his State of the Nation address in February that a plan would be in place by the end of the year. I suspect that that plan won't be in place, but he gave the undertaking, and I think government would take a great deal of flack if that target isn't met soon after, the end of the year. And I think everybody understands that the coronavirus pandemic placed enormous constraints on the development of the policy framework and the plan. So I think that we're going to have a plan or elements of a plan in the first half of next year. I think it's going to be a process. There's going to be toing and froing. I think the enormous economic benefits are too big to ignore. One of the challenges that we have is to ensure that data-rich modeling and economic analysis informs government and the plan, and that's work that we are trying to do. And that given South Africa's complex history, which everybody knows about, that small-scale farmers, indigenous knowledge and health practitioners and communities are not excluded. And so that by its very nature is a complex process. The critical question, I think, is we're not going to have a big bang, a type plan in place overnight. What are the incremental steps? How do we get plants in the ground? How do we get processing factories and investment in place? How is there a demonstrator effect and a catalytic effect which can be put in place? And as Pierre has said, I think there are already, I know there are already significant investment in primary production, in decortication and processing already happening, despite the fact that an optimal plan and policy framework isn't in place. So I think this is going to be a process. It's going to be a process involving government, business, labor, and communities. And we're involved in trying to ensure that that process is informed by robust data and information, including with respect to the global market and opportunities, and that it's an inclusive process which ensures that perhaps the most deserving of stakeholders, communities who, by the way, have grown what we call dacha for hundreds of years, are included, and that big international investors and companies, we want that kind of investment, but it shouldn't exclude, previously disadvantaged and marginalized communities.
I want to dig into that a little bit because when I was in Colombia a couple of years ago, and that market was beginning to come online, and similar to what we're talking about, right? It's a sort of a progressive approach to creating a marketplace. That also was a significant topic, making sure that the industry is inclusive, that marginalized populations do get to participate, and not only is there an opportunity carved out, but people are encouraged and supported and helped to become part of the industry. What types of steps, other than the acknowledgement that it should happen, what types of steps are being taken to make sure that it does happen?
Yeah, you want to kick off?
Well, the steps that we're taking is to set up an industry association and have affiliates from all the minority groups, so they have representation. We ourselves in our commercial company, as I say, have an alliance with the Black Farmers Association. We've also set up a foundation where we're encouraging private sector companies to feed back into the industry. And we've drawn up what we're calling the golden thread of the industry, which is the global cannabis culture, and try and have a sharing and inclusive economy. So we're trying to do what we're trying to do. There's some really interesting anomalies because the illicit market, as Garth mentioned, has been supplying recreational adult use cannabis for hundreds of years. But in terms of our legal development, that's on the back burner. We're developing the medical industry. Mm-hmm. So we see extraction as a point of quality control to include small communities as contract farmers. And we see hemp as a very exciting opportunity to get small farmers into the industry while in time the adult market gets unpacked. But it's top of mind for our government. It's in the legislation. And I'll make a bold prediction that I think we, because of our history, are better positioned to understand this kind of problem and address it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's the name of the foundation that you've started, Pierre?
The AfriCannaBiz Foundation. No,
okay, that's what I thought, but I didn't want to speak out of turn. I was pretty sure that's what you were referring to. And I know there's a number of associations in the region, but if someone was looking to engage and get involved, could you give us a couple of
please
associations to look at?
Yeah, you're welcome to distribute my contact details. It's called the African Cannabis Industry Association. And we haven't quite finished what we want to do, but we want to be the central association without members, where the member organizations join the association. So we're busy putting that together. And then by implication, you'll have all the member organizations. And there's lots of them. There's African Traders, there's Canna Traders, there's the Cannabis Development Council, there's the Marijuana Board of South Africa. There's a long list.
Yeah, but your African Cannabis Industry Association is trying to be a hub of communication. Yeah. That's, similar to the GCNC model, where exactly. We were working to, connect all the events around the world and all the different associations and groups. So it sounds to me like there's an offline conversation that still needs to be had between you and I on integrating those
absolutely
efforts.
And one of the key objectives is not only is the government fragmented, the private sector is just as fragmented. So we have to create a forum where we can have the dialogue. And that's one of the objectives, to create that forum so the dialogue and the interaction and building the industry can be addressed.